Hey guys, welcome to the stream. How's all keeping? So, full disclosure, as always, I'm gonna just I seen one or two people getting a bit excited about me doing the girl from the image on the video. But if you don't know, that's a really old sculpt that I did now. I did that like 3 or 4 years ago. Um, it was just like for the thumbnail, but that's an old one I did actually. I'll drop a link tree in the chat there. If you click on that, it has all my socials, including my ArtStation, and you can find that sculpt in there. But no, today we're gonna the last week I was on, we did Cullen, and I was debating on whether to go back to him. But I didn't want to be. We had gone a good chunk into Hellboy, so I said I'd continue on that. And I've done a couple of busts now, and I want to just. I don't want to keep showing you the same thing again and again. Just show you something a bit different. So, what we're gonna do today with Hellboy is I'm gonna pose him, put a jacket on him, and we'll see where we go from there. I'm going to do just a simple pose. You can see this is from the initial concept, and we're just going to keep to that pose him. And I was kind of thinking it might be funny just because he has a cigarette and stuff, just to have him like as if he's on a smoke break, and have a tiny little cup in his hand, which will be really good for giving him like scale, because everyone knows more or less the size of a cup, so that'll help. We'll see how small. I don't know whether to go like, I might go like comically small with the cup just to make him look huge. Could be kind of funny. But yeah, we'll start with posing him. I'm going to show you how then I go from the pose and put the clothing on, and I'll talk a little bit about why as well. So again, I've said this before, but I don't usually put music on. The point of this is, pretty casual. I'll talk about what I'm doing as I'm going along. If you want to put music on, feel free. I don't, because I don't want to just, whatever you want to listen to, you can listen to. So it's a little bit easier that way for you guys. Oh, Yulia. Hey, Yulia. Yeah, a little bit early today. Welcome, Alex. Prakash. Pramad. Welcome, guys. Yeah, so we'll get started anyway on it. So, first thing we're going to do anyway, simplest thing, is I've got T-Pose Mesh and T-Pose the subtool up here. So if you go into subtools Z plugins up the top and down to Transpose Master here you'll see T-Pose Mesh and T-Pose the subtool. So I just have them stuck onto the UI. So I'll show you what they do now. I'm sure most of you are familiar with these. It's a really cool tool in ZBrush. It's been there a while. So what that's done is, you can see here my subtools now. All the subtools are one tool now. It's all under one subtool now. They've all been combined at the lowest subdivision. So now we can pose it. And when we go back to T-Pose back to subtool here, so you can see transfer T-Pose Mesh to subtools, it will go back to the separate subtools as they were, except in the new position that I've put them here. I always kind of think of it as like a different, it like switches it to a different room, because it's non-destructive as well. You see, it like duplicates it over, and the original is still here in the tools. So kind of free flowing this one a little bit today. I know. Just mask all of this. So I know his big rock hand is his right hand, and that's, I'm pretty sure, pretty important to the lore too. So I don't want to screw around with this. Hey Alex. This whole NFT thing is, I feel like it's just gonna come up on every stream, and it's I was saying on the last stream, I'll give as good an answer as I'm going to. Oh, we're still doing simple things here. I don't want to get into a big debate over NFTs, because some people are all for them, some people are not. I am essentially on the fence, and that's mainly just because I don't want to throw caution to the wind, because I know there's potential issues here and there that hopefully can be fleshed out over time. Not gonna go into that stuff, but it's enough for me to be cautious about it. Yeah, it's also, the tricky thing with NFTs is it's essentially dangling a big bag of money in front of your face, which is always tempting, because we all need money. The goal is that financial freedom. So, the idea that you could make art that you like, post it with an NFT, and sell it for a lot of money and make a living just doing that is like phenomenal. So that in itself is, that the idea of that is amazing, and I'm all for it. But it's like most things, it's not just as simple as that. So yeah. It may be something that I get into in the future, we'll see, or at least try, but for now I think I'm just watching for a little while before I make a decision on whether I'm going to get involved in that or not. It depends. So I think that's all I will say about it, because I don't want to turn the stream into this big NFT discussion, and I know everyone has their opinions, and that's fine. If you're into it, if you're not, it's all good either way. Seeing Grizzetti doing it made me think it was legit. Yeah, I mean, seeing how well he did was definitely interesting. But yeah. So, okay, let's get this more or less where we want it. So yeah, I'm just using masks to get things in the ballpark. Trying to think about see, this is why I still keep things separate. I know you might think, oh, but like, you're gonna have to rework things then when you move them around, which of course, but you're gonna have to do that regardless. Even if it's all one piece, you're still gonna have to do that. Except now you've got, like, if you bend the arm, for example, like in here, you're gonna have all sorts of like bunching, and you're gonna have to smooth it back and try sculpt back into it, which is fine, but this way I can still control the shapes the way I did initially when I did the block out. So this way is a little bit for me, I prefer to do it this way, because it means I can continue to work into the shapes asymmetrically now, which is fine. So what I'm thinking is kind of like this angle. And what I want to do is like offset things, because what I want is I want a pretty stagnant pose. I don't want to go like super dynamic. He's not, this should be quite relaxed, because that's the mood in the narrative of the situation that I'm going for. He's on a smoke break, right? So he's not super excited to be on a smoke break or anything, so he's not going to be arms up or doing anything. Really dynamic is appealing, but is not always the right way to go, because it doesn't necessarily always serve your narrative, because that's where you should always be pulling all your ideas should be informed by the narrative of the situation. So I'm gonna keep it quite simple, but we can help the pose with a little bit of like there's a phrase, contrapposto. It's an Italian phrase. It's an Italian word that is essentially offsetting. You offset the angles of the body, so you can offset like lower one shoulder, higher the other, and then do the opposite to the hips, so you get different angles as you go down the body. And that's adding a little bit of a dynamic feel, just for that, because so just to avoid it being kind of boring and everything's straight, and just gives a little bit of visual interest to the shapes. So that's what we're aiming for. That's a good thing to remember, contrapposto. And also, just in terms of that sometimes people confuse. I think we're all guilty of it at some stage. I know I am. You hear something like make your poses dynamic, and you're like, okay, now I have to make every character dynamic all the time, as dynamic as I can, which isn't true. And then, or a classic one is the rule of thirds. So you're starting out and you're doing research on how to improve your composition, and you come across the rule of thirds, and you're like, okay, now every image I make has to apply the rule of thirds, which is not the case. There's tons and tons of different ways to compose an image, and that's not to say the rule of thirds is wrong, or making a really dynamic pose is wrong. It's just, it should be done for a specific reason. It should always be serving a purpose, and not just the rule of thirds because you don't know any other rules, or you don't know any other way to do it, or because one particular artist said one time that they love using the rule of thirds, or they like to use dynamic poses. Don't get caught in that. And there's obviously an element of, it takes time to learn different techniques and different rules and so on to help with these things. Knowledge is power. There's a great, actually, just thinking there, in terms of poses, there's a great book. Do you know what? this one here. So creating stylized characters. 3D Total published it. It's got some great artists in there, like Max Grech, for example. That's a really good book, and it goes over stuff like that, like how to stylize anatomy and how to pose characters, and it touches a little bit on like color theory. Really nice book. I highly recommend it. And it touches a little bit on contrapposto. Now, you could have even that, say contrapposto, right? So you're like, okay, so that makes it a little bit dynamic. But say you're doing like a guard, you know, like I'm thinking of the, you know, that shot in Star Wars, it's all red, and forgive me, my Star Wars knowledge isn't exactly amazing. In the like, what's his name? In the like throne room, this big red scene, Rey and that guy, they have like a big epic lightsaber battle with all these guards. Like if you're doing a guard like that, you don't necessarily, you want them to be very like straight angles, you know what I mean? Because it serves the narrative, it serves the look. So you're not just, you can't just go, oh well, contrapposto makes everything better, so let's just do it to everything. So that's something to keep in mind. Don't hear a rule and then just globally apply it to everything, because it's rarely ever the case. Fundamental rules like know your anatomy, but you know, there's a million ways to apply your anatomy knowledge. Let's, alright, let me think here. So before I just start changing angles, I want to kind of think of what way I want to lean these. I want to go that way or the opposite way. And yeah, sometimes like here, like I knew what I wanted to do with it, but I didn't sit down and figure everything out before I go in to start streaming. And I generally do that because it allows me to then have to think on the fly and think out loud, so that you can understand where the idea is coming from, like what I'm thinking as I'm doing it. Because if I figure it out first, it's kind of a staged, you know what I mean? It's giving you a false perception of how I'm coming up with ideas, because all I'm doing is streaming off something that I've pre-prepared already. I generally do that, and the reason being is just because I find that kind of, I've found that kind of frustrating in the past. With watching certain tutorials or streams or whatever, it's just too prepared, and so you're not really getting what the artist is really, the whole process the artist is going through. At the same time, it probably does take away, you could argue I suppose that it will take away from the presentation of it slightly, I suppose. But I hope you do understand it is for your benefit. Cool. let's just see. Is that do you know what? I think actually I'll drop this one. This is gonna be his heavy hand. So in fact it makes more sense. We let that one drop. We can raise this one. Hey Cena, Hopper Sean, how's it going, brother? Thanks a lot, man. And does Hopper Sean sculpt? Huh? Do fish swim? Do more than try. Niverdale, I want to say Niverdale. Good evening. Do you ever opt for leaving Geo floating rather than retopoing together later? Yeah. Like sometimes depends, very situational thing, but like for example like on the hand, say I might leave the hand, you know, and leave the hand separate and away from the body. Not necessarily on a character like this because I want to make sure everything flows, but like, you know, sometimes when I'm working on like very stylized, very simple characters, the arm is more or less a tube or it's a very simplified shape. I will keep the hand and just retopple it, keeping an eye on like how many loops I need to attach to the arm after the fact. So yeah. You know, it's kind of just, you know, common sense in a way. It's not necessarily, you know, if I'm just look at what I need to do and then think, well, would it's probably, you know, you just think off the top of your head like, oh, probably be quicker if I just did it this way. So it's very situational. It's not like when I do hands I do it this way. It's, you know, always be, never get stuck in one way of doing things. It could be different from one sculpt to the next and then the one after that. Right, let me think here. So I'll do a little. Before we do that, because I do want to turn the body. So I'll tend to try and keep the face where it is because that being still in the center of the scene, I can keep working on it after if I see something that I want to change, where if I shift that over here now I have to work on everything asymmetrically, so it can be easier to perspective. Yeah, there you go. So I'm just going to orthographics so I can do this. So I want this head to be like this angle. And the body, something like that. And now, because this is why I went back from turning the hips, because I don't want to turn the hips and then turn the shoulders, and now the hips look in an awkward position. So, you know, from macro to micro, or from broad to detail. So that's the bigger move, so I make that one first. I realised as well, for some reason, just without really thinking, when I was sculpting before, I gave Hellboy like human feet, but he has like hooves. So I'll need to sort that out at some stage. Okay, so the Benjamin's asking, I wonder about that, because so this is about having separate, keeping things separate to retopo later. I wonder about that, because if you need to use Dynamesh, you lose detail and things get stuck together. I guess a good practice might be using Dynamesh on separate parts like you were doing, and then connecting them with manual retopo. Then you can probably sub the workflow. Yeah, okay, so I will usually, I wouldn't go into like tertiary detail, you know, like skin detail or anything, until I'm at the after I've Dynameshed. If you're doing like a production character, it's going to be different, because you're not going to take it out. You're not going to take it out of asymmetry. Obviously, with this character, I'd have to do tertiary detail, like skin detail and so on it asymmetrically. Which I don't mind so much. I don't think that's a big deal. So I would Dynamesh once I have if I'm working straight in T pose or A pose, Dynamesh everything together, other than obviously like the hair and the eyes and the teeth and whatever. So Dynamesh the whole body together, and then like I've gone through the process before in some of the previous videos that like they're all on Pixologic's YouTube channel, like you can find everything there, where I duplicate, after I've Dynameshed, I duplicate the Dynamesh, Z-remesh the duplicate, and then subdivide that and reproject the initial Dynamesh sculpt onto the new one, which now has multiple subdivision levels. So I have at least now the subdivision levels back, and now I can go in and do tertiary details on that. And that way now I'm getting all the detail. And then I'd decimate that, or even I could decimate that, bring that into whatever way I want to retopo it, and then I can bring it back in and reproject if I want to bake normals or whatever, or else I can just take that high poly and the new low poly that I've retopoed manually, and you know, bake normals in a different software, whatever way you want to do it. But no, at this stage, like doing this kind of sculpt, this is very much just for like a still, just sculpting. I did say I'll go over topo at some stage. I can't do it just yet because I need to do a new base mesh. And I can bring that in and start the character from the base mesh, and I can talk a little bit about, you know, the edge flow and stuff. Why things are in certain places. Oh, thank you, Marina. Jenny Banks, really love your workflow, Paul. Thank you. This approach works a lot better. This approach works a lot better for me than just sculpting from a single sphere. I'm gonna try this for some more realistic characters as well. Yeah, that's the thing. This isn't like I'm doing stylized here, but this isn't. You know, this workflow will work for realistic characters too. You know, underneath a realistic character, you still should be focusing on the underlying shapes, and that's something that like I find recently. I tend to jump between like really stylized and more realistic. More like the most realistic I generally go is like comic book type realistic. You know, more or less kind of this. I don't go. I'm not into doing hyper realism. For me, I just don't find it interesting to create. I have done it, but so I just don't find it very interesting to create. And something that I find in a lot of that artwork, like more realistic artwork, not all of course, but something that a lot of people who do that fall into is they make the point about the detail, then about the texture, about the buttons and the zips and the all of that stuff, and they forget about the appeal of like gesture and shape language and all those things that absolutely apply to those kind of characters, you know. Like realism doesn't mean you can necessarily just skip all that stuff. It's just something that I tend to find even some successful sculptors who do realism don't really focus on that stuff, which is a bit of a shame because I feel like, you know, they would obviously they're fundamental principles and can only benefit the character. I think you should at least always, you know, you might think, especially if you're starting out, you might think, oh, well, I don't know enough about gesture, so I'm just going to keep it really simple. And that's kind of true, but like maybe you don't want to bite off more than you can chew to the point that you get frustrated with it, which is fine. But there's a balance. You still need to push yourself because you get better at whatever you do most, right? So, you know, if you keep trying to push that gesture, you will naturally get better at it. push the shape language. So there, I'm just even little things, like I'm just making sure. I want this to kind of feel that it flows straight down. I don't want too much of a, it's just to kind of simplify the shape a little bit. Like Stylized is, you could describe Stylized as taking realism and adding limitations to it. And that sounds like, oh, why would you want to limit yourself? Limitations breed creativity, because you don't have all the options open to you anymore. Having a narrative is a limitation. You can't just make any character you want anymore, because you have to adhere to the narrative. So limitations aren't bad things. It's a necessity for like any character design. So Stylized really is taking realism and applying limitations to it. So you cut back on the amount of shapes, cut back on the amount of lines, and obviously then there's different levels to that. So there's something like this, where I've got like a lot of relatively a lot of anatomical detail, compared to something like the Reverend Green character I did when I started doing the streams with Pixologic. I have that. I shared it at the top of the chat, but there it is again anyway. That link tree I just put in the chat has like a portfolio, like ArtStation and Instagram stuff. But if you go into the ArtStation, you'll see like what I'm talking about with the Reverend Green character. It's a much more simplified character, which I really enjoyed doing. Like that one was my own design, and there's little elements in it. Like he's a, it's Reverend Green, so he's a reverend. So, and I made him, I kept him round. The silhouette is round. There's no like super hard edges. But then I gave his eyebrows this like pointy thing. So just in the silhouette, you get these pointy, essentially horns in the silhouette. Like that just adds this like slight devilish twist, like almost subconsciously. It's that type of thing that you're looking for, and that's what I enjoy about doing Stylized, is that thought process. Like I am a character modeler, so when I do my day job, I get concepts given to me, type of stuff. But really and truly, like I love the process of character design, and it's important if you want to be a character modeler, because you have to translate from 2D to 3D, right? So it's generally not completely fleshed out for you. Sometimes it will be very much fleshed out, where you'll get lots of different angles, and you'll need to match everything exactly, which is fine, but that's not, I generally don't like that kind of workflow. I like to have an input, and the more input I have, the better. So for me, if I'm doing work for you, if you just give me a sketch that's interesting, gets the idea across, the general mood and vibe of the character, then I'm happy. That's where I'm happiest. I'm not really into just kind of copying everything, Let's bend his arm, faffing around. I get in trouble on these streams from some of you guys for talking too much, but kind of, it's just the way I am. Can't really help it. But I try to at least be useful in what I'm saying. I hope it is. It seems to be for a number of people at least, which is kind of why I do it. It's always nice to be useful. So I'm thinking like his hand, I don't know what way to pose his hand yet, but I'm thinking like I want it to be, I don't know whether to just have his hand wrapping around with a tiny cup, but it'd be kind of cool to have like, you know, him just really daintily, maybe with the little pinky out or something, I don't know, like holding this really small cup, which will give the image, the final image, it'll give the character a lot of scale, because like I said, we all know how big a cup is. We don't know how big Hellboy is. So we add that real world element into it, and then that gives it that sense of scale. You know, like even in, I think one of the first times I heard that was watching Feng Zhu, his design labs, right? I think it's called. I used to watch them all the time. I remember him talking about like a classic trick in concept art, environmental concept art, is like adding birds in the sky, because we all know how big a bird is, give or take, you know what I mean? It's even the biggest bird to the smallest bird, like we have an idea of that scale in comparison to like a statue, something really big. So if you have this image of a statue and then you just put a couple of tiny birds next to it, suddenly that statue becomes way bigger. Where if you put a cloud, like a cloud can be any size. So the idea is something there. I need to bring this back further. He'll be looking at the camera from this angle. So let's bring this back more. Then we can pull this back more. What I might do here is, let's just see. What I'm thinking right now is just trying to find, so I'm sure a lot of you have heard of a line of action. It's a very common thing. You know, if you do any kind of schooling on character design, you'll often hear of a line of action. So for this character, it'll often follow the spine. It doesn't necessarily have to follow the spine though. It's more like the kind of overall arcing gestural line that flows through the piece, which more often than not follows the spine, but it's not a hard fast rule that it has to follow the spine. So what I'm thinking is, like, I could make, I don't want to arc his chest too much because it'll look won't look relaxed enough. But if his leg follows, that, it will give it'll continue this line from, like, so the back of the neck through the neck, through the chest, around the abdominal, and then down through the leg. But doesn't necessarily, who has a smoke standing like that? It's weird. So not necessarily going to do it for me. As well. We'll come back to that idea. Let's see if we can find another solution. This is some problem solving. So just rotating this back. So this is the type of thing that I wanted to show you here, is the decision making. So I'm rotating that back, thinking, how can I get that hand away from his body? Because without having it stick out or something silly, that's going to be his big hand also. I don't want it to all fall into. It doesn't necessarily wouldn't necessarily be appealing for that hand to just be sitting in front of the body. When you think of silhouette wise, you lose the hand, then you lose the arm. So what I want to be careful of, I have to make a decision. And either have it intersecting the silhouette or away from the silhouette. What I want to avoid is a tangent. And a tangent will be, if this is our pose and that's our angle there, this is a tangent. So I don't want to use this, because a tangent will draw your attention. Again, people will always say like a tangent is a bad thing, don't ever have a tangent. But a tangent can also create tension, and it will draw your focus. So if you're gonna have a tangent, make sure you know why it's there. Don't have it by accident, because if it's by accident, chances are it's in the wrong place. It doesn't look right. So say this is our angle, right? We talked about, and so the thumb is no longer a tangent, but the finger is. Now, we're probably going to fold a fist here, so we can wait before we completely solve that. It's not too big a deal right now, because that's not necessarily how the hand will be posed. It may be a fist. But that said, so if you look at the arm, it's hanging at an angle. I'm thinking could be nice to have it straight down, because when something's heavy, like a massive rock hand, for example, you don't keep the muscles tensed. Same way, like contrapposto is, your skeleton is made in such a way you can lock it, like you can lock one knee straight and lean over that knee, and it means you don't need to use as much muscle to stay standing if you're standing still. So in the same sense, if you have something like if you're holding a dumbbell in your hand, you don't keep your arm bent, because obviously that's causing you need your muscle is going to fatigue from holding a weight tensed at a tensed arm. So you let it fall, and the weight will pull it straight down. And that's like, just, it's good to try and think like that. Try and think about try to think kind of just logically about these kind of things, because a thing like that is situational, and you're not necessarily gonna, read that in a book or see it in a tutorial and on a particular character where they did that choice. You're not they made that choice to keep an arm straight or a leg straight or whatever. You're often not gonna get to hear why, and unless you get into that mindset yourself, you're not gonna know to make that decision. And it's just I didn't necessarily have to have it straight, but it makes sense, and it's a way of, you can see now the hand is getting further away from that leg, so when that's a fist, it'll be a bit easier to keep it away from that leg. Don't mind if it cuts into the leg a bit, but it, like I said, I don't want a tangent. I don't want it just touching or even just close. I want it to be either decisively in or out, and that's a big thing. Your decisions should be sure decisions and should always look, designed and not just accidental. Benjamin, you want to share something for feedback? Share it. I can have a quick look but only share it if you're comfortable with it being on the stream. That's the catch. So if you're comfortable with me pulling it up on the stream to talk a little bit about it, then sure. And I can't give it long now. Tear it apart. Cool. Okay. Oh, this is interesting. This is not what I was expecting. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, very nice. It's I like the colours. I mean, yeah, it's a cool image. It's got that tiny what would you call it? Like, it's got that tilt shift feel where it feels really small, really like a macro. Is it macro bigger? Well, yeah, macro. Yeah, let's go that. Yeah, very cool. Really interesting. Yeah, it's a lovely little image. Well done. See, this is I don't want to open a can of worms now, because it'll end up where I won't be doing any work. I'll just be giving feedback. I don't mind, like, the odd time pulling up an image, but I like, obviously we can't turn the streams into that unless, if that was the case, maybe I could organise something else. Could maybe do that on my own streams, which I wouldn't be against doing. There's in that link tree that I put in the chat, there's a link to a Discord server. You can put stuff in there. There's a community in there. I've been terrible in the last while. I haven't been able to get in to give people feedback. I did for quite a while, but it's worth throwing it in there. I may get to it, or at least if it is a case that I can get time to, which I would actually really like to do, put together something on either YouTube or on Twitch, do some streams, or just some recorded content of some, kind of portfolio feedback, and I could pick, if it's there, I can pick from stuff there. And Tony, yeah, I'm gonna give him his right hand to do him. Yeah, that'll be late. That'll be after the fact. Get the pose and all that stuff in there first. But yeah, it's not Hellboy without his right hand to do him, right? Now, so something that I'm just thinking of here, I want to add a jacket. So it's not as pretty. But what I may need to do is, for now, is this. So that I can create a jacket that goes under his arm and then I can pull his arm down. Or I can just force it up a bit. But like if I dynamesh this, obviously I'm going to dynamesh this arm, which is not ideal. Times it. Cool. Oh, thanks to Benjamin. 120-second critique every 3 hours. Yeah, it looks a bit funny having it out, but it's just going to make it a bit easier for me later. Just use your imagination until then. What if you gave us something to lean on? Yeah, could do that. Try this lag thing again. Just get this in the center so it's pivoting from the right place. So the idea is to get this into kind of position that I'm happy with, more or less, ballpark. And once it's there, then I can go back into T-pose and I can refine all these shapes. Okay, so not job. Get that back, because what we really want is like this. Because you got the shoulders going from screen right to left, high to low. So we want, and then so this angle we're going to change on the hips to the opposite angle, which would mean this leg is straight and this one's bent. This way. I'm just alt tapping with the transform tool, and it'll angle based on the surface. See, so it's pointing away from the normal. So I can turn it based on the side of the leg. Paul, did you back the Hellboy documentary Kickstarter? No, I haven't seen that. I'm interested to see this though. Sean is asking, you gonna print this bad lad out? Yeah, I could. Yeah, that could be cool. I do need another. I need another sculpt to print. This could be the one. So I'm bringing it back. Oh, look, I've got a bit of the ankle there. I'll fix that later. I'm not going to keep these feet anyway. Get rid of that. Let's bring the ankles back so they line up. Starting to get something along the lines of what I was hoping for. I wanted him to be Hellboy, but look like a middle-aged hairdresser out in her smoke break. You know what I mean? That's like I took pose directly from her and applied it to Hellboy's rig. That's what we're aiming for. And it's a funny play on your expectations of Hellboy. Let's say that's it. For the sake of time. I can refine later. Oh yeah. Yeah, I think Comics Legend is all over that. Yeah, they have around ZBrush Summit. Yeah, you get there's a discount. To keep the soles of the feet on the same plane, then transforming them. The soles of the feet, yeah, like I want it, like you can see there, one is lower than the other, but you know, we can get away with because it's not actually going to be his final feet anyway. They're essentially placeholders. So I'm not too worried about the position of the feet just yet. So I want to push this out a little bit. This volume a little bit because you're getting that squash and stretch. So I'm going to pull this back to get that. Should have really done this in T-pose, but rather than going back into it, let's get it done here. So I'm just locking that leg back. So it feels like, you know, you get that sense of weight on that leg. And at this point, like, I still have the option to go in and sculpt on these separate shapes and just have them all working together without I'll need. This is probably, again, like I said, it's probably going to be a fist. I'm not worrying about this hand right now. And that's something you need to be aware of when you're working on the characters. Don't get too caught up in, like, you know, like I have a bit of a tangent here right now. Like, it's not going to be that hand later. So you're only wasting time to go in and try and work on it now. Just let it be until you get to that part. Doesn't have to, everything doesn't have to look exactly right from start to finish. Like, make sure and keep that in mind. Right. Okay, so say I want to add a jacket to this guy, but I don't want to put all the pieces in one. So under subtool, I can just go to merge down. Oh, sorry, no, sorry, merge visible. So merge down will merge one subtool down into the one below. Merge visible will just merge every subtool into one. This is different now to the T-pose mesh because it's not bringing everything down to the low subdivision or anything like that. It's just taking what's there. And I can just see the shoulders there, so I didn't have them up on the higher subdivision. So what you can do is, let's fix that. Go back here. This is actually dynamic, I think, yeah. So we can give that some subdivision levels. 2 will do me. And just to make sure that everything is where it needs to be. So I'm under subtools. And here you have all high and all low. So if I click on all low, puts every subtool on the lowest subdivision and all high to bring them all up. And then I can just merge visible. And it replaces, this one was here, so it just replaces. And you still have your separate subtools just here. So I can even just dynamesh now as is. So here it's dynameshed. So the point in dynameshing it now is I can extract shapes off of the dynamesh. See, that was a dynamic subdivision on that. It's not a big deal, let me just smooth it in. On the legs as well, I didn't realise they were on the legs. How did you put subdivision on? Oh, to add the subdivision, I just Control D. You can hit Control D, or you can see there, like under geometry, you can hit divide, and that will subdivide the mesh. But it's the shortcut is Control D. It's a good one to know. You're going to use it a lot. Oh, look at that! Look at that. That's fun. Let's not have to deal with that. Ah, Spicer's in. What's going on, brother? That was very good. Cheers, Spicer. You gentleman. Spicer McElroy's in there, people. Go check him out. He's a boss. And an L-star. Yeah, he's coming along. We're going with a funny kind of weird hairdresser pose, because he's out in the smoke break, because that's what we're going with. Could have done like a cool action pose, but where'd be the fun in that? I'm working on another character, another bulky character like this right now, who is going to be in more of an action pose, but that's for the studio, so I just wasn't in the humor doing the same thing again. Hence why he gets... And he had a smoke in his mouth, so I was like, yeah, let's do a smoke break. Let's do Hellboy and a smoke break. Have you been getting any 3D printing in? Yeah, pretty good. I did actually. I got I did a 3D print as a like a birthday present of like a cat, and it was I intentionally made it quite simple and stylized and cute, and of like a kitten in a pillow, sitting on a pillow. And so I have the Anycubic, and it just spat it out, no problem, easy peasy, barely any work. Put it through the, you can see it there behind me. So this is the printer, and then this is the Cure and Wash. So it's the Anycubic Mono X, and for any budding printer, 3D printers out there, worked a charm. And I used the lychee slicer that I sent to you before, which is way back now. It's a great little piece of software, and yeah, just printed it out, no problem. Night and day. I hadn't got the print for the longest time, because I guess with shipping being like a bit slow right now, I ordered grey resin, I think back in like October, and I only got it there like 2 weeks ago. So, but as you were saying, Hopper Sean there, I might actually, it could be fun to print this guy. Okay, so I've smoothed this out so I can just extract off of this. Let's do some masking. And yeah, other than that, plain sailing at the moment. Everything's going well. How are you keeping? Yeah, yeah. I'd love to print everything. I would like. It's I'm working on a few. I'm working on a bunch of stuff. I'm probably doing too much at once, because I'm kind of tipping away at loads of different things and not finishing any one thing. But I would like this guy. The other print, or the other sculpt I'm doing, is like a kind of a cyberpunky type girl that I started donkeys ago, because I'm actually learning Ornatrix. I'm using it to learn Ornatrix, which is a hair and force system, for those of you who don't know. And enjoying that. So, and I also use it just because I hadn't used Substance in ages, so I wanted to get back into that, and so I kind of use that. She's essentially a dress up doll more than anything that I'm using to learn a few bits, but I'm really enjoying that. And it was something somebody said, who was it? Something somebody said recently, an artist. I was watching something, and they said about how, it's very easy to get caught up in just making content rather than enjoying just sculpting, enjoying the artwork, enjoying the process. And I definitely can get caught up in that. So I've been kind of intentionally taking my time a little bit, just enjoying learning a few new things and slowing down a little. But anyway, back to your question. I can't really sculpt. I can't print her necessarily. I could, but I'd have to do a separate thing of hair, and where this guy could print, and he could make a cool print. So I may just do that. Have you done any prints, Spicer? How's the printing in an office? I've gotten 8 packs of E10 coming in tomorrow, and I was gonna set it up in my garage. How's the printing in an office? Yeah, so like technically I shouldn't have that printer there, because obviously there's, you know, fumes and whatnot, but you know, my body is a temple and it must be punished. So I do need to move it. But yeah, put it in garage. It's a much better idea, much healthier idea. Oh, you printed the Jedi and the Tiger for a friend. Nice. I'm gonna get most of my work printed out. Just gotta find the time. Yeah, that's the thing. So, when you say you're saying I'm gonna get most of my work printed out, so are you sending it or are you printing it yourself at home? I mean, really, yeah. All the work is in the prep. Once it's in the printer, it's out of your hands. It's not, I have to say, it's so nice now. Like, printers are getting a lot faster. Like, that is so much faster than the last printer I used. Like, easily twice, like half the time to do the same amount. So you know, you don't get that like gut wrenching when you see something's wrong. I mean, it's still not great because you still have to probably losing. I mean, depending on the scope, but you're probably losing a fair chunk of hours. But you know, it's not like for even simple things. I was using the Formlabs 2 in the old studio I work for, and man, even just a simple thing was taking like 34 hours, and stuff was, something went wrong, you go up to that the following day and it's still okay, and then you go up at lunch and you see like it's got like something's just completely gone wrong and it's not printed anything on, like the entire arm is not there or whatever, and it's just soul destroying. Where at least when it's as quick as that, you know, if it goes wrong it's not so bad, so it's a lot less frustrating than it once was. So we can just extract, accept. It's kind of cool looking. Yeah, the first one I took forever to know. It takes half the time to find out I did it wrong. Not 3D Printing Pros is a great YouTube channel and it teaches the art of supports minimal cleanup. Alright, okay. What's that? 3D Printing Pro is a great YouTube channel for 3D printing. I'll take that down here. I've probably even come across it before. Yeah, I've probably even come across it before and just didn't subscribe, because I find it's hard sometimes. You know, a lot of the YouTube channels, it's like people doing like parts, like mechanical parts and stuff, or like just these geometrical designs. They're not necessarily characters. That'd be great to have like. I mean, I guess it's more or less the same thing. Still, I'd like to see the characters. Niverdale tabletop. I'm currently printing every sculpt I made to get to learn my Mono and Mono X better. Working my ass off to get enough models done for our first Kickstarter. Cool. What are you doing for the Kickstarter? Yeah, Well, you've definitely got a good printer for it. I love that thing. Thank you, 3X Tiggy. My Skullface. I seen. Yeah, Mr. Skullface. Would you mind critiquing my work? See, this is. I feel bad now because I can't. I'll put that link thing there and put it in the. There's a link there under the link tree. If you click that, all social medias, there's a Discord invite there, and put it in there. And so you can have a look at it, because I can't clog up this stream because everyone else wants to. It's not fair on everyone to. And if I do yours, then I have to do the next person's, and I don't want to keep. I'll be upsetting people. Sorry, we're basically using this version because we can still go back to this, which is all in separate pieces. We're essentially using this as a clothing dummy. It's gonna be sexy, Hellboy. Got that little contrapposto, cheeky contrapposto. Tonight I'm having fun sculpting a vampire whilst watching your stream. Nice. Yeah, I like that. I know I've said it tons of times before, but I love the idea of just streaming. Even on my own channel as well. I'll not do that as much anymore. I don't have enough time necessarily right now, but I'd love to get back to that. Because I love just streaming and just kind of essentially chatting to other people, other like-minded people, while they stream or while they sculpt as well. Kind of keep each other company. Now I could even. Should I risk it for a biscuit? I could do some cloths in. Don't really need to. Not right now. Using flake brush. Knock this out where I need it. More or less in the ballpark. Sure, why not? Let's have a mess. See what it looks like. Alright, pull up our dynamics. Version volume. I'll bring this inflate down. Firmness. Oh, it's stretching. Let's see what happens. That dodgy topo. just let it hang a little bit better. No quick lack. Do you ever use cloth dynamics for cloth, or is that cheating in your opinion? I don't think it's cheating. I don't really use it personally that much. Sometimes, like I was talking about that cat that I made for printing, and I did the cat sitting in a pillow. That was going to be like, you know, the base of the print. So the cat is sitting in this little pillow. So when I sculpted the cat, I just created a little pillow, and then I used the cloth transform tool and just pushed the cat down into the pillow. But then once I did that, I also then went in and sculpted wrinkles myself into the pillow, because I like to have control to make some, you know, my own kind of appealing folds and so on. Times actually, yeah, I'm still good. So yeah, that's I use it here and there, but for wrinkles and stuff, I like to do them myself. I like to try and do anything like that myself, because obviously if I start using cloth sim every time and then I just rely on that, I'm not, while I'm doing that, I'm not getting better at sculpting cloth, you know. And that's important. For me, it's important. I want to be able to do things without relying on, you know, too much like automation or sims or whatever doing too much of the work for me. And I enjoy the process. So that's a lot of it. Now I lifted this arm out. I should have done the same thing, because you can see now I have to now go in and manually fix this, which is my stupid fault. But you get the idea. You know, now I can just subtool, copy, paste. And there it is. Folds tell a story as well, exactly. Absolutely. Yeah, why give the program all the fun? Like cloth sims are great, you know what I mean. They are really handy. They can save you a lot of time. They can give you some really cool results. You can use them for all different sorts of things. Definitely by no means against using them or anything like that, but generally when I'm doing characters I always sculpt them myself, for that reason, like I said. You know, look at like James W. Kane. I've been a huge fan of his work for years and years. He was a big inspiration. Believe it or not, because I know like my style and his style don't aren't like similar or anything like that, but the mood and the creativity in his work is something that I admire a lot. And the way he does cloth and hair, he's amazing. He's one of my favorites. Or like Alina Ivanchenko is another one of my favorites. Much more recent. In the last like 2 years or something like that. Maybe a bit longer. I discovered her work, and I'm sure a lot of you know both of their works. And like something both of them have in common is they're really, really creative. You know, if you see Alina or James's work, you don't need to see like a signature in the corner or anything underneath. You know their work as soon as you see it, because they're very distinctive. And they didn't do that by using any sims or whatever. They just got stuck in clay build-up or whatever. The artists were James W. Kane and Alina Ivanchenko. Two stylistically very different artists, but principally have a lot of similarities, I would say, in terms of just being very unique and creative, and very much have their personalities are very much in their work. James W. Kane they're both stylized. James W. Kane a lot less so. He stylizes in a different way. I wouldn't call his work stylized. Obviously does not mean cartoony. Fox from a Box, and JW Kane, fair play. Artizete. It's as opposed to the two of them there on Twitch. Hold on, I'll repost them here. Just so it goes across all the different YouTube and Twitch and everywhere. They're the two there. They're probably two of my top three. Like they're amazing. And there's a couple of you'll find the odd video here and there of them working. Alina did one recently, actually. Was it for Nvidia? You'll find it on her ArtStation, on her latest one. You can watch her process. She's incredible. And there's some stuff like you can see James doing some sculpting. He doesn't necessarily do tutorials or anything like that, but he was in the last wasn't it the last one? I think now. He was in the last summit. Yeah, it was the last one. He was in the last summit. So if you didn't catch that, check it out. He did like a really cool veteran sculpture that was printed on an industrial scale printer. It's pretty amazing. That's an interesting question. Ward, do you enjoy 3D over 2D? That's tough. Yeah. I don't know. I'm better at 3D. Um, but I love 2D. Like obviously, I do a lot more 3D, but I maybe do more, or maybe follow more 2D artists than I do 3D artists. If I follow plenty of both, but um, yeah, I love 2D. I always have. Even like when I do my own designs for characters, I always start with like a loose sketch in 2D. And a big part of that is just to keep drawing, just to make sure that I keep drawing, that I don't lose that entirely. Although I would like to draw a lot more. I should be a lot better at it at this stage than I am, because I just don't. I'm doing 3D constantly. So for years now, so obviously I've improved more and more, as you would, but I haven't been putting nearly the same amount of hours into my 2D. Still doing it, but just not really as much. I miss painting. I used to paint a lot. I found painting very hard. I found colour theory specifically very difficult. We all kind of take to different things. Like, I think I'm better at 3D naturally. Like, I just took to 3D quicker. I'm better. I'm not too bad at drawing. I've done drawing professionally, like character design here and there. Not nearly as much as 3D, but yeah. But painting I find very difficult, but I love it. Like, that's another reason, like Alina that I was talking about there is a fantastic 2D artist and paints like incredible, which is just, I have a lot of admiration for someone who can be that good at both. I remember being told years ago not to do my own, and I understand where the advice was coming from, but I was told not to do my own designs, to do use really established artists and do their designs, because obviously you're starting from a better base is the idea. And I did do that for a while, and I still do work from other artists' work too, but the more I go, the more I like to do my own. Does it make the work better? I don't know, but it makes me better. So yeah, and that's a great point. Jamizzle, I always find the more 3D I do, the better the 2D gets, just because something clicks about drawing things in space. They're both too fun to pick a fave. Yeah, couldn't agree more. Yeah, my 2D has improved over the years from doing 3D, which is very handy. Because they share the same principles. Anatomy, shape language, gesture. I do find it is certain things about drawing, certain things about sculpting and drawing, that some things are easier than others. Like, I find it's easier to get nice gesture in 2D, and it's easier to get like more dynamic shapes and more flow in your shapes in 2D. By nature of the time required to make shapes in 3D, what tends to happen is it tends to just become more stiff than if you work from 2D. Now, of course, that's not like a rule, but does tend to be the case. Let's get rid of some of these edges here. Insert. Just delete a bunch of these, because really we can delete all of them. I mean, we want this to have weight. So if I add in terms of like wrinkles, less is more in my opinion. Well, less is more in my opinion, but then you look at James Cain's work and like, you know, he's like a wrinkle master. But yeah, I always just try to be careful not to overdo it, you know, because it's very easy to all your wrinkles should have a reason for being. Don't be falling into that mistake of like going in with the standard brush and like just going nuts everywhere, and you know, think about where they're coming from, why they're coming from there. So like shoulders coming back here, so you get like a fold in here. You get folds either side of that. And then it's like across here, so it's falling from there. So get that in there. Make sure to, like, you know, mix it up. Don't just do peaks, do valleys also. And I'm doing this here, but usually I wouldn't. Usually I'd also go get reference, because otherwise the wrinkles tend to be, you just tend to make very generic wrinkles. Or well, I do. I think most people do. You know, like in general with anything, like references. Like I said at the start, knowledge is power. So do get reference, because it will help a lot. I'll add in a few little. So I'll come out. Vary them in size. Don't keep your brush size the same and just do loads of marks everywhere. You'd be surprised how much better it looks if you even just follow that rule. Vary the size. I need to fold these sleeves up too. Times it. 10 minutes. So what we'll need to do is, we'll actually need to get rid of those subdivisions anyway, because we're not done modeling this. What we want to do is extrude the loop. Oh. because now you see it's following all the way around, just for that reason. And that way I can extrude coming all the way down. Yeah. Cool. Let's do it this way. Just poly group, poly loop. Or I can just, so at least I can, should select rectangle on. I can flip that. If I need to isolate it. So I'm just gonna use mask edge loop complete, use that all the time. And flip it. And now I can do what I want with it. I can create a collar out of that. I'm just gonna really, this needs to be like way up here. Getting real messy with it, but don't want that high on the neck. Imagine them almost going for a smoke down an alleyway, you know? The wet, dirty old alley. Starting to get the idea. So this is the thing, right? So I'm working on this. This jacket is like half, not even, it's like 5% of the way to complete. So as I'm working, I'm thinking, right, so this jacket, it's gonna have pockets, it's gonna have like a strap thing around it, it's gonna have stitching, it's gonna have wrinkles, it's gonna have like folded up arms here, it's gonna, and then he's gonna have this big his rock hand, you have a belt across here, and his shorts, his hooves. I can even, you know, when I get to the point of shading, I can add like a emissive shading here and put a little light source there. I can even have emissive eyes if I want. Add a bit of mist into the render. Add like, I could even add like a cobblestone alpha on the ground with like, you know, and just add like a roughness map to that to give like a sense that it's wet. That little tiny cup, and I think it would be funny to put like, you know, have the cup have like I'm drinking out of a Batman cup, like have a cup like that where it's like Hellboy holding a Batman cup, but it's tiny. Something like that, you know, little ideas like that. Don't know whether I'm gonna go with all that specifically, but you know, like that to me could end up as a cool render. You know, him looking directly at the camera, some fog, see a little bit of fog so you can see a bit of a glow to his eyes, nice kind of dramatic light. I could do also a second render well, multiple renders, but another render of like just a display lighting so you can see all the form as well, and then have then a separate like more dramatic lighting, like a street lamp or something like that. um, yeah, and then obviously also finishing off this pose, pulling that arm in, so as you're working you're keeping that idea in your head the entire time. um, Polygroup's colour is a very hairdresser. Yeah. I would have said pimp probably, but yeah. Smoking down it anyway. So you don't want to get caught up in like going in and making sure all the detail in his hand is really cool or whatever. Like think ahead, have a final image in your head that you can work towards, so that you're not like faffing around playing with like stitching and all that type of stuff, when only to find out that your pose isn't really working, isn't really selling the idea. Have a final idea and a reason for it. And that it actually stops you from getting stuck in the things, because you'll know ahead of time, well, I'm not going to do the stitching now because I'm going to move that arm in and blah blah blah. Like, I'm going to do certain things that's only going to get in my way if I do it right now. It might make it look better temporarily right now, but it doesn't serve any purpose other than that. It's only going to cause me trouble down the line. So yeah, keeping that kind of thing in mind at all times. Let me see here. Still now. Let's pull this down a touch. Where? Wait, something I can actually do is go into geometry, go into deformation, polish by groups. See that? So you just clear these up, all those lines for me. Polish by groups is super handy. You can even temporarily just add in extrude all polygons. Oh, it's doing some funny stuff. It's because I have that hard edge, I need to break that. Not really, but it's whatever. And then, once I have all that done, I can do some texturing on it as well. Like, this is just a flat red color. Like, I can go in and do some more painting, bring out some like dirt and grime and all that kind of like the rock detail in the hand and all. So there'll be a lot of different elements adding to this that will really give it that finesse in the end. So, but it's important to remember that now and not get caught up in trying to add details for the sake of it too early, because it really adds like a serious amount of time. Like, you'll double or triple the length of time it'll take you to get to the end. What program do you use for the render? I use Arnold. Arnold's a renderer in Maya, so that's what I use to do the renders. It's Flash 3, excellent brush to make wrinkles. Slash 3, yeah. Yeah, cool. I missed the quote. What is your workflow? Getting thickness into the clothing, or are you going to leave it as is? Yeah, so you can see it there. I just use the Z modeler brush and just select extrude on all polygons, and that way I get a uniform thickness rather than sculpting onto thickness. That you get like the thickness ends up getting really thin in places because you smooth it in an area or whatever. So yeah, hope that helps. It's been simple. Always wondered how people handle clothing, especially things like collars and hoodies and such. Yeah, so you can definitely, like I showed you before, using like merging visible of your whole character. You can use that like a mannequin and extract the clothes off of that then. And if you want to use the dynamics, or you just want to go in there and sculpt it yourself, whatever way you want to do it. But from here then you can go in and add in your details, your pockets and so on, and then figure out your wrinkles and straps and all that good stuff. Yeah. So if I missed any questions, feel free to drop that into the comments section, and hopefully myself or someone from the Pixologic team will be able to get back to you. If you like the format, you like how everything's going, you think you're enjoying the streams, make sure to hit a like so that we know that we're going in the right direction. If not, feel free to leave a comment with any suggestions, all that good stuff. Subscribe, of course, if you haven't already, because then I'll be continuing with this. Sculpt, so you'll get to see, and including all the other sculpts that are on the channel and that I will be doing in the future, along with all the other streamers as well. And yeah, hope you enjoyed it, guys. So for now, we're 3 minutes over. So I'll love yous and leave yous for tonight, and I'll be back in same time Wednesday in 2 weeks.